Well, in my first experience with death really didn't have anything to do with people. It had to do with a gopher. So we were actually out trapping because in Iowa, what you could do was you could trap gophers, and then you'd cut off their hind legs, and you'd take a pair of hind legs in, and you could get a quarter. So you get 25 cents. Well, I was on my cousin's farm, and they were capturing some gophers. One was captured in a trap, and my dad pulled the trap out and saw that the gopher wasn't dead, and so he took the gopher and just whacked it against the side of the building, of the house, to actually kill it. But you have to remember, this is a farm community,
Yeah.
and a lot of farm animals, and that's all just part of life. There was no real grieving process associated with the gopher. There was a surprise at seeing my father act that way with a level of brutality that I'd never seen in him before. So I had that, and but I wasn't really concerned, and I learned that I shouldn't be concerned about the gopher. The gopher didn't have, from a relative value standpoint, the gopher didn't have any real value compared to people. As it relates to assisted suicide and euthanasia, I think there's a real place for assisted suicide, because that can actually happen from a real position of love versus hate. Kind of, it's not killing someone, it's helping someone move to the next level, or the next place, or the plane. Because where they're at right now is so unbearable that it's not a pleasant place to be. It's not a pleasant experience anymore.
Yeah.
And it never can be again for them.
Yeah.
So as we progress through life, then near the end of life, and that could happen when you're young or old, but at the end of your particular path, then indeed I think there's a place for both of those things. As it relates to my personal feelings about what I'd like to do, I believe at this point anyhow, and this could change, but at this point I'd like to be buried versus cremated. And there's some specific reasons behind that. One of them was through an accident. I was in fact on fire, so I know how much that hurts. Now I know that when you're dead, my head knows when I'm dead. I can't feel anything, but my heart or my feelings don't always know that. So I think I'd rather be buried. And as far as where that happens, that could happen one of a couple places. The forest lawn is one of those places that's pretty universal. I believe I'm qualified to go out to the VA cemetery. Not a lot of trees out there. Kind of like to have a couple of trees, you know. And as far as the ceremonies and that, yeah, I'd like to have everybody get together and talk about who I was, what I was. Hopefully, they have positive, happy thoughts about our relationships, and I think I've certainly tried to work hard at giving myself, with the people I really care about, a good positive experience with me. Interesting thoughts. What happens after you're gone, after you're dead? Well, do you have a soul? And if you do have a soul, what is it, and where does it go, and what happens to it? Well, when you come into this world, you come into this world with a base capsulization, if you will, of who you are, and then you actually blossom with education and the people around you. So some of the things that you come into the world with, you come in alone, and when you leave, you're also alone. Now, I was brought up in a real solid Christian environment, Methodist, but my personal beliefs don't necessarily center around Christianity, because there's so many different religions, and so many of the religions have similar characteristics, whether that's to guide people to make it a nicer place to live, or whether it's something that actually happens, I don't know. As far as your soul, what happens to your soul, what happens to that energy, who you were, even when you think about things foundationally from a science standpoint, something has to happen to that energy. Now, what happens to it? Does it go into an ether, and it's around it and is absorbed. I think there's probably steps before that happens, but I think that something does happen to that energy.
So I decided to interview my grandfather, Larry Christensen, but he's known as Papa to all of his grandchildren and his own kids. And I decided to interview him because I wanted to learn more about his stories and experiences that in his life that that I didn't know about, and especially you know a topic of death that's very intriguing, and so that's why I interviewed him. I chose to interview him, and I interviewed him in his house in Fontana, and the interview took about, I want to say, about a little less than an hour, maybe 55 minutes. Um, and I was actually incredibly shocked with his answers because I was not expecting that. He is he's a little strict and kind of straightforward a lot of the times, but he has this really fun and joking side, and both of those kind of came out during the interview. So um, it was a good interview, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, very very good.